Right, let's continue with more news. Zimbabwe's government has insisted that President Emmerson Mnangagwa has won Wednesday's poll with nearly 53% of the vote and have dismissed any criticism. The opposition leader Nelson Chamisa has described official results from presidential and parliamentary elections as a sham. He says that even international observers have reached the same conclusion. Mnangagwa was elected for a second term with 52.6% of the vote. Chamisa, who leads the opposition Citizens Coalition for Change party, secured 44% of the presidential vote. The SABC did not sign the paperwork to confirm the validity of the poll. Some Zimbabwean politicians have credited the observers for reporting accurately on the controversial elections. Zimbabwe is battling with a number of challenges, and the new government will face a monumental task of fixing the economy. Well, continuing with that story, Minister of Higher Education and Technology in Zimbabwe has condemned the European Union Election Observer Mission on its preliminary report in relation to elections in that country. He says the mission does not have legal obligations to question the constitution of that country. Now, the mission said that the elections in Zimbabwe did not meet the regional and international standards.
Zimbabweans went out to the polls on 23 August 2023 and voted in a peaceful manner, a fact that has been acknowledged by all observer missions. To say that the election was peaceful is not to say that there were no glitches or minor glitches like in any election. For example, minor glitches like the late distribution of materials in few locations were timeously corrected and within the legal framework of the country. Against this background, we also find it a bit disturbing and unfortunate that the EU Electoral Observer Mission deliberately issued a sweeping statement full of misrepresentations and allegations. It is, in great measure, the preliminary report was not based on direct observation as for our expectation, but was basically based on other indirect sources of information. We wish to emphasize that election observers were supposed to observe how an election had been conducted and may make recommendations on areas of improvement, which Zimbabwe as a sovereign state can accept or reject. It is highly unfortunate that the EU Election Observer Mission made conclusions based on hearsay and on the basis of one-sided information from the opposition, as there appears to be a wholesome adoption of their positions on many issues. We had hoped that the EU EOM would observe our elections with an open mind and be impartial as agreed in our administrative arrangement, signed between the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Trade and the EU, as well as the Code of Conduct for Observers. A preliminary report of this nature already points to a negative final report, which is clearly designed to damage the image of Zimbabwe. It is unacceptable for an observation mission to arrogate itself the duty to assess our democratic institutions that were constitutionally established. This, we believe, is a gross interference in the internal affairs of a sovereign state and therefore totally unacceptable.
Well, to unpack this further, we are going to be joined via Teams by political analyst Rebone Tau. Good afternoon to you, Rebone. Thank you for your time with us here on the SABC.
Good afternoon to the viewers.
So we could get your comments or your observations rather regarding the electoral process upon the announcement of Emmerson Mnangagwa as the president for a second term. Was the playing field even, perhaps even as we, in terms of the build-up to these elections? What have been your observations?
I think one must start by saying, looking at Zimbabwe historically, there's always challenges, with elections, they're always disputed. The issue of ZEC, it's always been raised by opposition parties. It's not a new thing, we know about the voters' roll, which has always been contested, even in previous elections, the issue of the media not having media that is not biased, that is only focusing on the ruling party, the state media. So you have also the freedom of movement of opposition parties. So the things that have been raised in these elections by opposition parties, these are things that are not new. They've been there. We can go back to 2008 elections, 2013 elections, 2018 elections,
Well, no, absolutely. And that context is important because I want to hone in on the political climate, the economic and social issues that the country faces. I wonder if you would say that it is a reflection of what's also transpiring in ZANU-PF itself. And then with, President Emmerson Mnangagwa now in for a second term, given the sanctions, given the isolation, the key issues that need to be grappled with for its citizens at large. How do these elections fit into Zimbabwe's efforts to re-engage with the West, with the rest of the world?
I think first and foremost, which was very interesting about these elections, ZANU-PF did not have a manifesto, like we saw with other parties like the SABC launching their manifesto days before the elections. One of the things that ZANU-PF said that the work that they have been doing as government is their manifesto. They don't need a manifesto, to present to the people of Zimbabwe in terms of what they will be promising them moving forward. The issue of sanctions, has been on the table for a very long time, and I know I've engaged with some Zimbabweans in the past, and from the civil society, some were even at a point saying that probably the sanctions should be lifted so that ZANU-PF can stop, making sanctions an issue, in terms of turning the country around, because every time when they're not able to move, everything is blamed on sanctions. And indeed, you look at the economy of Zimbabwe, it's very bad, and that's why you have a lot of Zimbabweans also coming to South Africa, for a better life, for economic reasons, because of the economy in Zimbabwe has literally collapsed, even their currency that they are using, it's literally collapsed, the Zimbabwean currency. That's why they are using the rand and the US dollar.
Because, absolutely, because now we have to look at where to from here. Obviously, the opposition said to contest these elections, given some of the allegations that have been put forth. They've got about a week or so to get that up and running. I wonder also how the issue of leadership is going to come into play here when we look at SADC and the AU at large, because obviously what transpires there, even if we're looking at the worst case scenarios unfolding for whether ZANU-PF stays in power or the reactions that come as a result of this, it's going to have an impact on neighboring countries as well.
Absolutely. We've seen the report, by SADC, and the attacks they have been issued on the head of the mission, of the observer mission of SADC, by the ZANU-PF, the likes of Christopher, but also what is interesting from a SADC perspective, we've seen Tanzania, the president, congratulating President Mnangagwa. We've seen the president of Namibia congratulating President Mnangagwa. So at least there's two countries within SADC now who have taken a stand to say that this were legit, elections, credible elections. We support the outcomes of these elections. But also to be very interesting to see, because obviously the opposition, which is SABC, will have to approach the courts and provide evidence, on the issue of rigging elections or whether the elections were not free and fair. But if you look at Zimbabwe, how it's structured, even the courts, one can say they're captured. So I don't see SABC winning that case. But the question is that what role will SADC play, especially after the final report is presented? Now you're having like two countries, as I've said, one is also waiting to see what is South Africa going to say, because South Africa actually is feeling also the pinch of the instability that is happening in Zimbabwe, because of we have so many migrants, from Zim.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And looking at the economic situation, the crisis unfolding there, the high inflation rate, some of the social ills and political ills that you also alluded to, At this point, what's going to be top of the agenda? What are the bread and butter issues at this point? I mean, Zimbabwe was also once the breadbasket of the Southern Africa. So really, where to from here during Emmerson Mnangagwa's second term, perhaps as it's been declared as we speak?
I mean, one thing about Zimbabwe, and that's why for them internally within ZANU-PF, when you speak to people that there is some power struggle, and I was talking to some people earlier on today, and they were saying for the first time, very interesting, you're not seeing celebrations, in Zimbabwe from ZANU-PF members celebrating this victory. It's because of the power struggle within the party, for also resources for survival, and some will say that allegations have been made that, some groupings within ZANU-PF feel that they are being sidelined by the president who has just emerged, second term, which really means that there's going to be a lot of division. And that's why Kwasakweri, them blocking him from contesting, he was going to divide that ZANU-PF vote. So it's going to be very interesting to see what's going to happen and how is the current president going to move, because of also there's allegations or rumors of that there might be an amendment of the constitution for him to run another third term. And what does that mean for Chiwenga? What does that mean for the military component that played a big role in removing Mugabe to make way for him?
Nope, and obviously the succession plan, is top of the agenda there, because President Emmerson Mnangagwa is also in his 80s. And so who will come next, or what will happen next, is definitely some of the questions we're also asking at this point. We'll leave the conversation there for now. Thank you for your time with us and for those sentiments on the back of the announcement of Zimbabwe's elections. We know that President Emmerson Mnangagwa has been voted in for a second term. It seems that the opposition will be contesting. They have rejected the results. So we'll have to monitor developments and see what unfolds from there. And thank you to Rebone Tau for their time here on the SABC.